Hello there, psychology students. How are we doing? Hopefully, everyone is doing well. So, I'm excited tonight. We're going to be doing our live review. We're going to be doing a Kahoot. We're going to be going through all 5 units, actually, kind of 6. I realize some people are stressed. I also realized, too, some people are a little bummed that we didn't do an individual stream for each unit. I was trying to. I have some of it made, but this course is just massive. And to be able to create everything, I just wasn't able to get it all done in time. And so we're going to do this. It'll still be fun. I also will go over a little bit more detail on some of the things. But hopefully people are doing well. Tonight, tomorrow, before you know it, it's going to be the AP exam. So that is exciting. All right. What we're going to do, we're going to just do a couple shout outs. We're going to get into the Kahoot in just a second. I also want to highlight, put it on the screen. When you're studying, make sure you are looking at this CED. This is the stuff that College Board is going to be asking you about. Everything right now connects back to this course exam description. So this is in the Exam Slayer and the Ultimate Review Packet. You can also just Google it. I have a link in the bottom here. And actually, before I skip over it, for the AAQ and the EBQ, make sure you spend time, especially with argumentation and research methods and design. These you want to make sure that you have a good understanding of, because this is right here. This is like the AAQ, and then this right here is going to be the EBQ. So have an idea of these skills. Make sure that you're familiar with an experiment, the non-experimental methods, understanding like a meta-analysis and all that stuff. And then again, here's all the units. If it's not in the CED, it is not going to be on the exam. And I can see some people already asking, like, do we have to know the people? For example, when you look at the CED, you'll notice there's not really a lot of people anymore. They've pretty much taken all the people out. That is not a big component at all for this test. They are going to be a lot more focused on, do you understand these concepts? Expect there to be probably some more reading. I know last year for the AP psychology test, the students were a little surprised is that the questions took a little bit more to go through. It wasn't just what's the definition of this term. They were reading like, oh, here's like a little scenario, or here's part of a study. And then you had to like connect to a particular concept or identify a concept within that study or that research there. So I would not right now focus on memorizing a bunch of people, but understand how these concepts can connect. And when you're studying that too, that'll also help you with the FRQs, the EBQs, and the AAQs. Remember, you're going to have one of each of those on the test coming up. So without further ado, we're going to get into our Kahoot. I will connect back to the chat. We'll try to do some back and forth throughout, but I also want to make sure that we're helping you out. So again, check out that course exam description. Right now, this is what you should be using. Great way to go through it is you can just kind of look through and see, do you understand heredity? Do you know what heredity, nature, the whole nature-nurture debate? Understand these concepts. They're in there. If it helps for you, again, this is part of the free. I broke it down for you guys. So if it's easier for you to study, I just took the topics, learning objectives and essential knowledge, put it in this document. This is free. You can go into the link in this description and go get it. And then if you want, you can also do the practice tests and stuff in here too. So if you're looking for extra practice tests, you can go through. It's timed. It's just like College Board and stuff, so you can kind of cross stuff off. But all right, enough of that. Let's get into the Kahoot. If you do have questions on any of that too, let me know. But I've already been talking too long, and I want to get into some Kahoot. So we go. Cool. Yeah. Is the ultimate review packet really ultimate? I don't know. That would be up to you to decide. I would say it is. Let's get it up there while we're talking. If people have questions about it, by all means, I can answer. All right. Feel free to sign in. Here we go. Sign in, sign in. Let's get going. Apparently it is. It's ultimate. Yeah, the ultimate review packet was insane this year for AP Psych. So not only do you have all the summary videos for every unit, which they're all over like an hour, then you have all of the different study guides. And then I try to do a quiz on almost every single topic in the course just to make sure you had extra practice in there. So still adding more things to it and trying to fix things there. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in it. All right, cool. We're getting in here. I'll quick get our code copied over. again, I made 10 questions for each unit, and we also have some questions that focus on those core skills as well. So there's about 60 questions in here. So, all right, we're going to get started. You can always join at any time. We have our first kind of question coming up. Also, to realize with Kahoot that I'm a little limited on how much you can type. So some of these you'll have a slide first, like here, and I'll make it full screen so you can see. So here you can kind of try to read this, and then we're going to go to our question. So, and actually, as people are reading this, I did forget. Let me know where you're from. I'll pin some of them on the screen as people are reading our first question here. So let me know where are people from. We're all studying from around the country, and that's awesome. That's the cool thing of doing these live reviews here. So feel free to post. We got people from North Carolina, New York, Florida, India, shout out to India, Tennessee, Miami, Canada, the capital, Pakistan, New York City, Georgia, New Jersey, New Hampshire, Jordan, Ohio, Arizona. We got people from all over the place. Awesome. California, represent. It's always so cool being here with everyone. All right, here we go. First question is up. Oops, I made it bigger. You just got to go to there we go. All right. So which of the following research methods was most likely used in the study? So what do we got? So we had researchers were interested in how melatonin supplements affect sleep quality. So to test this, they have their reoccurring 120 patients, randomly assigned them to two groups. One of them received a melatonin pill before bed. The other received a placebo. So what do we got going on here? Awesome. The majority of people got this correct, which is great. One thing with this, so remember, when we're talking about these, so for part A of the AAQ, you are going to use experiment, you're going to use meta-analysis, case study, naturalistic observation, and a correlational study. So those are like the main 5 answers. Now, technically, you can also put down a cross-sectional, or you could say longitudinal, but those are always going to be connected with one of the 5 main answers. So those are the main ones to focus on. But you want to make sure you can understand the difference between an experiment and the non-experimental methodologies. So have an understanding of there. Remember to meta-analysis. I see some people asking, what's meta-analysis? This is one of the answers that you do want to be familiar with. So make sure you study it. But in meta-analysis, remember, we have multiple studies that we're essentially analyzing. It's kind of like a study of studies. So they're going to look at a bunch of different studies to reach broader conclusions. So those questions are great at describing kind of that original data and collecting there. It's a synthesis. We're taking all this information to see, is there any overall broad trends there? But it is a non-experimental methodology. So hopefully that helps there. Remember with correlational studies, so some people are asking about that. Correlational studies, they don't involve the manipulation or necessarily random assignment. So correlational studies are generally just observing the variables as they naturally occur. We're trying to see, is there a relationship? And with correlational studies, remember, you're going to be focusing also on the R value there. So whenever you see independent and dependent variables, random assignment, and we're looking at some of this cause and effect, that's generally signs it's an experiment there. So, and again, you got time. Those, though, I'd make sure you spend a little more time understanding before the actual test, because those are going to be on the AAQ. You know, part A is going to say identify. So part A is identify the research method used in the study. So hopefully that helps. We're going to keep going. We have a lot of questions, and I'm going to keep connecting back to all of these concepts here. So, all right, what do we got here? What is the goal of rational emotive behavior therapy? So what do we got? As people are answering, I'll try to answer some more questions. Some people are asking, what's a longitudinal study? Remember, that is a study that's looking at long-term changes over time. So generally, we're following a group of people or a person throughout their life or over 25 plus years. So that would be the focus there of like longitudinal. Cross-sectional is going to be where we're looking at people. For example, we could take people in first grade, second, and third grade. We'll look at them all at like the same moment in time. So we're taking a cross-sectional of multiple groups there. So cool. We have a little bit of division here. So we can see majority of people got it. So let's go over this one just to make sure it makes sense. So remember, for when we're looking at this, the reason why green here is correct So remember, when we're talking about our rational emotive behavior therapy, the goal here is really helping individuals identify these irrational thoughts. And then we're trying to also kind of disrupt that. So, for example, someone thinking that like they have to be perfect at everything. The goal would be to try and replace that with more of a rational and productive manner. So, for example, like, okay, it's all right if I'm not perfect on everything, I can be good there. So, it's commonly used, this type of therapy, for anxiety and depression. Those would be some of the common things. For the free unconscious drives, that's going to align more with the psychoanalytic therapy. So, rational emotive is focusing more on the conscious thoughts. We're trying to focus there, not on the unconscious. Same thing too, when we're looking at reinforcement for adaptive behavior, that actually, I should have just said same thing, but that's going to be more centered around behavioral therapy. So that, if you're thinking about conditioning, that would be more behavioral therapy there. We're focusing on that reinforcement aspect. And again, the REBT is focusing more on cognitive. And then self-esteem, technically, self-esteem, like an increase in a person's self-esteem, could be an outcome. So that could happen because of the therapy, but that isn't the main focus of it. So the main focus there is to change that irrational thought pattern, but it's not necessarily to directly boost self-esteem. If that happens, that's great. That's awesome. That's a positive, but that's not the main goal. That's not the primary goal. So that could be an effect of it there. So hopefully that helps with that one. We can look at our leaderboard. Let's get that up there. We can see where we're at. Change in the leaderboard. We got a lot of questions. There's going to be plenty of time to go back and forth. So I'll get our next question up. And we do have one where we have a little scenario here. So I'll put it on the screen full so you can see everything there. Here we go. Some people asking, is the live saved? Yes, you will be able to see this after. So once it's done, you can rewatch it. If you want, you put it on ×2 speed, whatever you want, but you'll be able to see it after there. So, all right. All right, here we go. There's 60 questions. So we're going to have to, we got stuff for all the units. All right, going on. Here we go. Next question coming up. All right, what concept does this illustrate? So what do we got here? Take a minute. We have Emma sees a driver, cuts her off, and assumes he's a rude person, rather considering he might be rushing for an emergency. What do we got? Some people, I think some people said maybe the Kahoot got maxed out. If it did, I do apologize. Hopefully the answer is bold. My bad. I did not even see that. All right, but let's quick talk about this. So the answer is bold, so that might have helped. One thing when we're talking about the fundamental attribution error. So realize this is going to connect into dispositional attributions. It's also going to connect into situational attributions. So remember, dispositional attributions, these are explanations that are going to focus on the internal factors of an individual. So these are qualities within a person. Remember, situational attributions, on the other hand, those are going to be explanations that the focus is on the environment or different situations that affect a person. And with those two, also realize that could connect into different biases. So for example, like the self-serving bias, which would be when an individual is going to attribute their success to internal factors, but that they're only going to do that when they actually succeed. If you fail, then you're going to say, oh, no, it wasn't my fault. It was these external. So we'll use situational attribution there. So we'll change how we attribute our different factors based on our success rate. There's also the actor-observer bias that you could probably connect it to as well, which, remember, that's the one where we as individuals use situational attribution to explain our own actions. But then we're going to use dispositional to explain someone else's. So like you would use this, for example, if, like, let's say hypothetically you're late for school, you might tell your teacher like, oh, don't mark me tardy because of the traffic. So it's a situational thing. It was outside of your control. But then if like you're sitting in class and you notice another student comes in late, you might be like, wow, look at them. Like they're lazy. Clearly they're disorganized. They can't even get up on time. And so there you're using dispositional. So that's, again, how we're attributing things. Again, remember, dispositional is these internal factors. Situational is outside. The only other thing too that you could actually connect to as well is, don't forget, like explanatory style. So that's another concept from the CED that you want to be familiar with. Explanatory style is going to be then when people are looking at themselves, other events, the world, and you either are optimistic or pessimistic. So essentially, do you have more of a positive spin on it, which would be more optimistic, or is it more of a negative, which would be pessimistic there? A couple people in the chat are asking about the just world phenomenon because that was one of our answers there. So I'll make sure we quick talk about that one and social loafing as well. Realize just world phenomenon. All it is it's just this belief that people get what they deserve. So for example, it would be like if someone looked at someone who was homeless and instead of feeling empathy for them and pity, they might be like, clearly they did something wrong. This is what they get. Like there's a reason why they're here. So sometimes it can connect into like victim blaming. Social loafing too, remember that's going to be when people put less effort in to a particular activity when they're in a group. So for example, if you're in a group with a bunch of people for a school project and someone's going to like, I'll just let someone else do all the stuff. That'd be social loafing. All right, here we go. Next question is up. What do we got? All righty. I will, this will be posted after too. Also, let's see here. What do we got? All righty. Yes. Telegraphic speech. Awesome. A little bit of division here. Just remember when we're looking at the different things with speeches, telegraphic, that's going to be like, think of, if you think back to like a telegram or whatever, where you like, did it send like the back and forth. It's very choppy. It's not necessarily like complete sentences. It's just like two or more words. Overgeneralizations, remember that is going to be when a child or like a new language learner is learning a language and they take rules and they're going to apply them way too broadly. So for example, instead of saying wint, you would say goed. Like you're taking things and you're applying it incorrectly because you're learning the language. With the one word speech, that is also known as a holophrase. That's also what you might have heard. That's just where you're using one word to express a larger saying. So for example, my 2-year-old sometimes just said like milk, which I know means he wants it or he dropped it. It's not just saying that topic, it's connecting to a larger sentence there. So another thing too with language, just to remind you of, is there is also like phonemes. Those are going to be like those first sounds that an infant makes. So that's like the M in mom or the sh in shut. There's also morphemes. That's going to be the smallest unit of meaning. And so those contain at least 2 of the phonemes. Then you have semantics there where you're looking at the meaning of words in a sentence. Grammar, again, which remember is going to be that set of rules that a language follows. And then syntax, that's going to be where we're actually looking at how words should be ordered in a sentence. So those are a couple of vocab terms that could connect. They weren't on the Kahoot, but I want to try to also provide more value for you guys and help you out connecting into some of the other concepts that are in that CED. All right. Let's go on to our next thing here. Ooh, okay. We got a couple changes here. Still puffing on the top. All right. Syntax error. So someone was saying about a syntax error. That would just be the incorrect word order or like structure in a sentence. So like you're mixing up how things should have been. It's like you're not putting the noun or the adjectives in the right spot. All right. Here we go. 4-year-old Ben constantly asks why and enjoys pretending to be a firefighter or superhero, often creating his own activities. All right. Going on to the next thing. Here we go. What conflict is he working through here? What do we got? Here we go. Yeah, if you're Kahoot, some people are saying we might have maxed out the amount of people that can be in a Kahoot. I do apologize for it. I'll post this Kahoot in the ultimate review packet, or also I'll post it as well in the exam layer. So if you have one of them, you'll have it so that we can do it there. So I apologize, but you still can play along. You can put the answers in the chat. You can still play along and review. Yes. All right. Let's quick talk about this one a little bit. So let's break it down. So when we're looking at this, as we're going through, you're not done for. So remember initiative versus guilt. This is going to be that kind of third stage of Erik Erikson's psychological theory, that the developmental theory. So generally this is occurring around like 3 to 6 years old. I wouldn't spend too much time necessarily memorizing all the ages, because it kind of can depend a little bit too, depending on the individual and the child and the person themselves as they develop. But children during initiative and guilt, remember, that's where they're going to start to be able to make more decisions. That's where they're going to start to initiate more play. They're going to have more activities. They're going to start engaging in more imaginative stuff. They're going to start asking lots of things. Industry versus inferiority, that is going to be more like 6 to 12 years old. That's going to be when children are starting to actually focus on kind of mastering some of their skills and that productivity. So like school becomes a really big component there. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. That one, remember, is going to be our second stage, generally a year and a half, 3 years old or so. But that's going to be more focusing on things like potty training or making like some simple decisions. So you're starting to get some independence. You're starting to have some of it, but not fully. And then the last one there, trust versus mistrust, which I realize I should have left this up so you guys can see them. But the trust versus mistrust, that's that first stage. So that's kind of birth till around 1 year old. And everything there is just about like, can I trust the caregivers that I have? Are they going to provide my basic needs? Am I getting enough food? Am I getting shelter? Am I feeling love? These basic things, these building blocks. And the one thing too, with the different stages, remember they build off of each other. So for example, if you're developing trust in that trust versus mistrust stage, that carries on with you to the future stages. I would have an idea when studying the different stages, understand some of like the big kind of life events that's kind of happening there, like what an individual's going through and what the conflict is about. That way, if you see like kind of a scenario question, so if you have like we mentioned at the start of the stream, I think the multiple choice, you might have some longer questions where you're reading and then you have to like connect to a particular scenario. So have an idea of what people are going through during that stage. That way, depending on what you see in a question, you can kind of connect it. If you understand the main idea of the stage, then you can connect into different scenarios there. So, all right, let's go into our next question there. Here we go. We got another little slide to read. Here we go. Carlos saw a lightning bolt flash. And for a split second, you could still see it even after it disappeared. So again, I tried to make some of these a little bit longer. Kahoot limits it. That's why we have some of the kind of stages there. Some people are saying an after image could be after image. That would work. I didn't go with that route, but that would work there. Some people asking if I watched the videos, my YouTube videos. Yes. One thing with the YouTube videos, I did not have time to make topic review videos for units 1 and 2. So if you notice, I have the summary video for unit 1 and 2 on YouTube. And then all of a sudden it's just the topic for unit 3 and 4 and 5. I also had unit 0. It was just way too much for me to make everything. I really tried. I couldn't, because I wanted to add so much detail and make sure I covered everything. So if you're using the YouTube videos, don't use the old ones. So use the new ones. Those cover everything with the CED. If you have the Ultimate Review Packet, those summary videos with the study guides and all that, they cover everything. It's aligned to that CED. I tried to go through it and make sure I covered all of that stuff. So yes. All right. Majority of people got this, which is awesome. Remember, iconic memory. This is that visual information. Very, very brief. This is why if you wave a sparkler really fast for that split second, you can kind of see the trail. Echoic memory, remember, that's going to be sound. That's also really brief. So similar there, but it's just sound. Short-term memory, remember, that's where you're going to actually try to hold it. You can generally hold information for 15 to 30 seconds. Maybe you're going to use a lot of maintenance rehearsal here. Just try to keep something in your mind, so you're constantly repeating it over and over. Sometimes you'll also, in this class, you'll hear about working memory, which is connecting there. And then long-term memory, this is where you're storing things indefinitely. This is after it's been encoded. So long-term memory, we have encoding. So hopefully that helps for that. All right, let's go on to our next question here. Here's our leaderboard. The Great Wolf in the lead. Way to go. Yes, echoic for sound. You can think of echo. Whoa, almost spilled my water. That would have been bad. Right on the computer. All right. All right, so we're looking here at sleep. Anyone know what that image is too? What is this image? Let me know and I'll pin it in the chat. So what do we got? What do we got? All right. So with this, again, we're talking We have waves. Yes. There we go. So an EEG, that's what's actually using to scan like the brain waves. So it would be an EEG. That's what it actually is. You don't have to know all the imaging techniques, but EEG is one of the ones that you do have to know. So that'd be what it is. But if you're saying like the waves, like delta and all that, that would also connect. That's what we're seeing there. With sleep, in the CD, it does say have an idea of being able to identify the brain waves with the stages of sleep. So that is in there. I would look at that just to have an idea of it. Again, I don't know what's going to be on the test. However, if it's in the CD, it can be on the test. That is a possibility. If it's not in the CD, it's not going to be on the test. So remember with REM sleep too, that is the paradoxical sleep. That's when your brain waves actually become pretty similar to when you're awake. So your body's very, very active during there. Another thing too to remember is actually with REM, if you don't get enough REM sleep, you might experience REM deprivation. So that's another concept from the CD connected to REM. And that then means essentially you're deprived of your REM, which then might cause you the next time you sleep to experience REM rebound. So REM deprivation, REM rebound, you might see them connected in a question. I don't know for sure, but like they complement each other there. REM rebound is again that time when you go to sleep the next time and all of a sudden you're going to enter REM more quickly and you'll spend more time in REM. You're essentially trying to make up for some lost sleep. So that would be the thing there. For the brain waves and stuff, that if it helps, you could look at like the different wave structures. So again, you have the peak and the volume, not volume. Why am I blanking right now? I'm blanking. The fun of a live stream where like, especially when you're doing all the units at once. Maybe if someone posted there, I'll quick put it. I don't know why I just quick blinked on that, but we're going to go on to the next question because I realize we've already been going for 27 minutes. We do have a lot of covering here. Amplitude. Yes. Perfect. Tip of the tongue phenomenon as well. Look at that. We're connecting stuff all over the place. Great job, chat. Awesome. All righty. Yes, it was amplitude. All right, here we have a study that tests whether caffeine affects memory. Half the participants drink a caffeinated beverage and half drink water. All right, let's see here. What do we got? What would be an independent variable? What do we got? Yes, this will get posted after. Frequency. You could also look at the frequency. That would connect as well. All right. So again, this is a kind of a concept from Unit 0. So again, Unit 0 is those core skills. That's what I'm kind of remembering or talking about here. One thing with these, remember, awesome. Majority of people got it, so I'm not going to spend this much time on it. Just always remember IV is the cause, DV is the effect. So the dependent variable is the effect. The independent variable is the cause. You probably are going to see these connected. Like I think a lot of those core skills you're going to see on the multiple choice and stuff, them integrated with other units. So you might have like a scenario or a study from a particular topic, maybe even on sleep, and then it'll connect into some of those core skills there. So be on the lookout for that. One thing too, when we're looking at experiments, so besides just the independent variable and the dependent variable, remember too, there could be confounding variables. And don't mix that up with the third variable. So third variable is more for correlational research. That's going to be more of the non-experimental methods. So a third variable, remember, is that variable that wasn't measured, but it is causing changes to the variables that are being studied or observed. So essentially creating this kind of false association. The confounding variable is more for an experiment. And this is that uncontrolled factor, something that is affecting the dependent variable. So generally, you're always going to see confounding variables with experiment and the third variable with our non-experimental method, particularly correlational research. So have an idea of that. I know the question wasn't specifically asking about it, but I'm trying to also connect to other concepts, hopefully to see how all these things connect for you guys. All right, what do we got? Which neurotransmitter is linked to muscle movement and memory? What do we got? Big thing there. So when some people are asking about like Z-scores, we're really just talking about like when we're looking at standard deviation, how far away we are from the mean. You don't have to worry about calculating like the p-value. You don't have to worry about calculating z-scores. It'd be more just understanding kind of what it means. For p-value, especially like statistical significance, that would be a factor to actually spend some time making sure you understand what that means. So yes, cool. Majority of people got it. Remember here, dopamine, that is going to be involved with like that reward, motivation. Serotonin, that's going to be your mood, appetite, It's not directly with kind of the muscle movement or memory. GABA, on the other hand, is going to be that inhibitory neurotransmitter. So GABA kind of helps calm some of that neural activity. So that would be the focus for that one. All right, we're going to go on to our next question. Got a lot going on here. Manifesting a 5 on this and a 5 on the Gov. Hey, you already had Gov? I hope the Gov exam went well for you. So it's last week. There you go. Yes, some people you could connect into emotion. Also, too, like the neurotransmitters. Some people in the chat are correctly pointing out different disorders. So connecting to concepts from Unit 5, those could come back there as well. So, for example, schizophrenia and stuff. Yes, we could see some connections between our different units there. All right, let's quick talk about this one. So remember here, proactive and retroactive interference. Some of these terms, you just kind of got to study them a little bit and be on the lookout. If you ever see retroactive interference, be on the lookout for an answer that's going to be proactive. They're not necessarily trying to trick you, but College Board's trying to see, do you know the difference between them? So remember, retroactive, that's new information, disrupts old information. Proactive is old information disrupts the new information. So in our example here, we can see Laura can't remember her new locker combination because she keeps trying to, typing in the code from last semester. So we have proactive interference here. This old information is interfering with learning or even just recalling the new information. So in this case, Laura, she can't remember her new locker combo. Why? Because the old one keeps coming to mind. So that's why it would be proactive. So hopefully that helps that. Again, some of these terms, they're similar. So just be on the lookout. And this is why too, on the test, you have time. Don't go too fast. You can highlight and underline. For me, I always tell my students, you see a task verb, always underline or highlight that. You see a specific vocab word, term, always underline or highlight it. And the reason why, one, it slows you down a little bit, so you're not going to make a mistake where you go too fast. Two, it's also going to help you focus on what is the question actually asking about. That way, when you're connecting to your answer, you can see, okay, this is actually going to see, does it connect perfectly? Because sometimes, excuse me, sometimes there could be other answers that are close, but not the exact term that the question's asking for. So have an idea there. All right, I'm going to have to get a drink of water. I'm going to go on to the next question, though. So 1 second. Read, and then we'll do our next question. All right, sorry about that. Thank you. All right. Trying to get back on everything. Okay. Yes. So when we're looking at this, we have classical conditioning. So majority of people did get it. Operant conditioning was the one that was, I guess, second. So we can quick talk about that. Remember, classical conditioning, we are learning through this association between two stimuli. So we have acquisition happening here. Operant conditioning, on the other hand, learning is focusing more through consequences. Remember, consequences can be positive or they can be negative. So it could be rewards or punishments. So with the operant conditioning, generally some behavior is done or some action happens, and then it's followed by a reward or punishment. And then that then will either motivate that behavior to happen again or disincentivize it. In this case, when we're talking about being bitten by a dog, we're now all of a sudden seeing a connection being made here. So in this example here, when we're talking about it, we have classical conditioning because the neutral stimulus, the barking of a dog, has now become associated with an unconditioned stimulus, the dog bite. So that then leads to the response of fear. So over time, maybe that neutral stimulus alone would eventually go away, but we'll have to see. So this could also connect to, we could even do like exposure therapy and stuff. If we wanted to connect to try and counter it or counter classical conditioning, you could get into as well. All right. Change in the leaderboard there, but the legend, the Puffin, remains on the top. All right, after a stressful week, Jonah suddenly forgets who he is and travels to another city with no memories of his past. What do you got? Yeah, that works. Classical conditioning. Nice. Some people in the chat are getting it. So if you're not able to get in the Kahoot now because we've maxed it out, no worries. Feel free to sign in and you can play along in the chat by putting down the answer. For when's it going to end? We're going to end when we go through all the questions, and we have about 60 questions. So, all right. Yes, majority of people got that, which is awesome. So remember, Fuge with Fuge, that's the thing that's going to focus then on actually kind of traveling, taking on that other identity. So that's the part that's connected to that specific thing there where he's traveling to the new city there. So Fuge, amnesia, that's where you're forgetting who you are. You're taking on another identity. All right, here we go. Which is the best example of a display rule? What do we got? Here we go. So remember, display rules, elicitors of emotion, kind of concepts there that have come up throughout the CD. Cool. The majority of people got it. So remember, display rules, these are essentially cultural norms. They're going to tell you how and when you should have emotions and how you should express that. So, for example, certain societies, depending on where you are, there's certain environments where it's okay to show more emotion, and there's environments where it's not. Generally, we can see too, like your age, your socioeconomic status, all these things impact it. For example, children, it's a lot more acceptable for them to have outbursts in society. But if I take my 4-year-old out and she has a tantrum, people might get annoyed at it, but they're also like, oh, it's a toddler. We understand. But if I was to go out and had a tantrum, people would be like, what in the world are you doing? It'd be kind of violating that cultural norm, that display rule. So it'd be looked on more frowningly upon. So that would be why the hiding sadness at work, in this example here, that could be a display rule at work. You're not supposed to show sadness. You're not supposed to show certain emotions. So that could be an example there. So hopefully that helps. Thank you very much. Can I go over? There's a lot of personality disorders. That was one of the longest topic review videos I ever made. So I do appreciate the super chat there. Unfortunately, I can't go over all of them right now because there's so many that it would take quite a good chunk of time. I do have some in here, so we will be going over them in some of the questions though. Otherwise, I have the video that's specifically on the personality disorders. And actually, if you check out my ultimate review packet, I have a quiz on each personality disorder. There's 10 questions for each one, so that way you can get practice with them. And then I also added explanations for all of the different concepts there. So as you're answering it, you can see why all of the stuff connects. So hopefully that helps there. But yes. All right, we're going to go on to the question now. So after weeks of intense pressure at work, Sam feels constantly tired, unmotivated, and emotionally numb. Here we go. So what could this connect to? Seven seconds left on the chat. It took you 4 hours. It's insane how big some of these units are. I get it, there's only 5 units, but there is so much information in it. The cool thing is really interesting, but yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, definitely. All right, with this, so one of the things, remember, with the general adaptation syndrome, this, you don't have to worry about like the person who like created it necessarily for the AP test, but you want to understand those 3 stages. So remember, this is where you have the alarm, the resistance, and the exhaustion stage. So in our example here, when we're looking at it, essentially we can see Sam, after weeks of intense pressure at work, he's constantly tired. So he's having a lot of pressure. Pressure is stress. So it could be eustress. It could be distress. Remember, we have positive, negative stress there. So you want to understand the difference between eustress and distress. That's 2 vocab terms you want to be familiar with there. But because of this constant stress he's feeling, now he's becoming more unmotivated. Essentially, his body's becoming more and more tired. So that would suggest we're moving more into that exhaustion stage. And remember, when we have prolonged stress for too long and you go into that exhaustion stage, this is also when you're going to be more susceptible to getting sick. Your body, essentially, it becomes more difficult there. So If we look at the other one, like the alarm stage, this is going to be where you have that fight, flight, or even the freeze response, where you're encountering the stressor, the resistance, you're kind of fighting it there, but your body also starts getting used to that higher level of stress there. For people who put the emotion focused coping, remember there, we can take this off. Remember, emotion focused coping, this is going to be that strategy essentially of managing a stressor. And here you're actually not going to try to solve the problem. Instead, you're going to try to get support, or you're going to try to distract from it. So it's a coping mechanism that an individual can use. It is different from problem-focused coping. So remember, that one is where you're going to try to target the actual issue and try to solve it. That would be more problem focused there. Cool. We're going on to our next question there. So hopefully that makes sense. The last one I saw that people had is the semantic symptom disorder. Remember, that's going to be a disorder where a person does experience physical symptoms like pain or fatigue. So the fatigue part could connect. But generally what we're seeing is that with that, there's like this undue worry that an individual is experiencing. And there isn't necessarily a reason for, at least physically, the condition there. Yes, I will post. So for people asking about the Kahoot, I will post the Kahoot in the Ultimate Review Packet and also in that Exam Slayer if you want. So if you want to use them, I'll post them in there. You can use the Kahoot once we're done. This video will also stay up as well. So hopefully it helps. Cool. Majority of people got it. Fluid intelligence is correct. One thing to remember with fluid intelligence, don't mix it up with crystallized intelligence. A lot of people got this here, but remember, crystallized intelligence is going to be more learned knowledge. Fluid is going to be more of your problem-solving ability. So have an idea of that. Like, so for example, crystallized intelligence would be like your vocab, your trivia, things that you just kind of memorized. Fluid intelligence is like solving a new puzzle or like a logic thing. So generally, fluid intelligence goes down as you get older. Crystallized intelligence generally increases or kind of stays the same as you get older, unless you have some memory things that happen. So that's a different kind of topic. So have an idea of those two there. Cool. Yes. Fluid does go down. That's why, like, as you get older, technically, like, people aren't as good as video games anymore because, like, your reaction rate and all these things start to decrease. So your ability to quickly handle that goes down. Fun fact. We all get old. All righty. Here we go. Which term describes the smallest change in a stimulus so that you can detect? So you are detecting. So what do we got? Someone is asking about AAQs. I can show a thing in just a minute for that. All right. So when we're looking at this, maybe I should have worded this one a little bit different. So for here, realize the difference threshold, you also might have talked about it in class as the just noticeable difference. So it could have been that. That is the smallest amount of change that you need. That a person then will detect 50% of the time. So like, for example, if you're changing the volume on your computer or your TV or your phone right now, when can you hear like the exact like difference between, like all of a sudden you realize, oh, it did get louder. So that would be that just noticeable difference or the difference threshold. Absolute threshold, that is more connecting, remember, to the minimum level of stimulation needed to detect a stimulus at all. So such as like the faintest sound at all. So it's not necessarily detecting a change, where the difference threshold is focusing specifically on the change there. So we're focusing on like a shift in that stimulus. Remember then sensory interaction, that is just looking at different senses influencing each other. So like how when you are eating something, so your taste is going to be influenced by also what you're smelling. So like if you can't smell, for example, generally the food doesn't taste as good. In signal detection, that theory is looking at how we detect stimulus under like certain like conditions. So that'd be the focus on that one. All right, here we go. Great Wolf in the lead. Way to go. Way to go. Here we go. Someone EBQ in the exam. I'm trying to get it up tonight or tomorrow morning. So I'll try to get one up there for you. So hopefully that will help. All right. After watching a documentary, Priya says she knew all along that the experiment would fail. What do we got? What do we got? Oh, a bunch of people are here. Apparently this is a really easy one, according to the chat. Nice. That's good. I hope it's easy. Easy, easy. It's red. It's yellow. It's green. It's blue. GG's. Yes, this would be hindsight bias. So for those of you who got wrong, no worries. Remember, confirmation bias, that's going to be that kind of bias where you're going to seek out information that supports your beliefs. So I always use the example of like politics. I don't care what political beliefs you have. That's not what I'm going to talk about, but more of generally, if you lean more to the right or if you lean more to the left, generally you start seeking out sources of news that also lean to the left or right. That way it kind of confirms your position. So that'd be more confirmation bias. Belief preservation. Well, remember that is going to be where you're maintaining a belief. So even after it's disproven, you're like, nope, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm keeping this, even though you have other information there. Yes. And representative heuristics. Remember heuristics, that's these quick judgments that we're using. And generally, it's just what we have around us for information there. Okay. When we look at this here, we have Tara believes people are basically good and can grow if given support. She emphasizes self-actualization and personal growth. What do we got here? AP exam is going to be at the same time for everyone. There's a little bit difference between the East Coast and West Coast just because of time zones. But yes, you all take it at the same time. So you all take it at the same time. Everyone at the same time there. Yes. We're going to ace this exam. Awesome. I hope you do. Yes. Humanistic. Cool. Majority of people got this. We're going to go on to the next one there. Just to make sure, because we do have a lot to go through. Here we go. All right. What is Broca's area? What do we got for Broca's area? Dun, dun, dun. All right, yeah. So some people are in the chat. I was just trying to like drink some water, read the chat quick. So some of these people are like, "Hey, this is really easy." For some of them, remember, we're just talking about different terms here. So hopefully some of them are. One thing with Broca's area, don't forget Broca's aphasia. So that is that language disorder there, and that happens like if Broca's area is damaged. Generally, what's going to happen then is we're going to have difficulty in producing speech. So people with Broca's aphasia typically understand language fairly well, but they're going to struggle to speak it fluently. So have an idea of that. You might see it pop up, possibly. I don't know for sure, but you could see that pop up there. So just wanted to point that out. One quick thing in the chat, some people were asking if for AAQs, in the exam slayer, if you want, I did make some videos. I've been trying to make more videos if you haven't noticed. I made a couple just for them of like common questions that I got about the AAQs and then also the EBQs. So some people are asking some questions. If you want, you can check it out here. It's really going over some of the different things. So some of these are just some of the questions that I got. Again, too, I tried to also add more AAQ practice stuff in here. So you can actually like take them. There's a study guide or an answer key. You can like break it down. So that way you can actually get some practice. So if you're interested, this is a great way just to practice tests. To help out. You can even like see the answers and explanations too. So some people are asking about it. That's what it is. So when you hear me saying the exam slayer, that's what I'm talking about. All right, here we go. On to the next question. Here we go. Some people asking about barons. If you did get the ultimate review packet, you can get the exam slayer for like $12, I think, or $11 or something, $11.99. You just go into the URP, you can get it in there. It is the only thing, like the ultimate review packet and the exam slayer are the only things that I really charge for. And that's what allows me to do all the channel stuff. This is also why I made sure though, too, that we had videos on YouTube for every unit covered. So it's all for free. So if you want any of the topic review videos, they're all on there. Any of the units I couldn't do the topic review videos for, I made sure that we had summary videos for you too. So I tried to make sure that there is a bunch of free stuff there, but the packets are what helped me actually be able to make this stuff. So I do apologize. It's not all free, but that's kind of the reason why I kind of need it to be able to get off. So when we're looking at this, one thing with Piaget, so when we're looking at the stages here, remember that sensory motor stage there. This is going to be that birth to about 2 years. Infants here, they're learning through their senses. So motor movement is really important here. This is also when they start to develop object permanence, which remember is a vocab term you want to be familiar with. This is going to be when, like if I remove something, like so here's a battery. If I take that out of the view, they know it still exists. So generally there, around 8 months of age, that kind of starts to happen or so. Pre-operational, remember that's going to be around 2 to 7. Again, don't get too hung up on the ages there. Focus instead on what's going on during the stages. And that's going to involve like symbolic thought, language, imagination starts to happen a lot. Object permanence has kind of already happened there, but we start to see more and more stuff happening with the development. Concrete operational stage is going to be around 7 to 11 years old. Now we're getting into like logical thinking, and we can kind of understand some concrete events. Reversibility, conservation. So remember there, conservation is the idea that properties such as volume and mass, they remain the same, even if they're transferred. So if I pour water from one glass into another, the water content is the same. And reversibility, remember, that's when an individual can do reverse operations, essentially take a mental thing and they understand that they could go backwards. Like 2 + 2 is 4. If I subtract 2, it'll equal 2. So these are just some of the concepts that do connect a lot of times with Piaget's stages. So I want to just kind of highlight them. Another thing too, remember, don't mix up on the AP test assimilation versus accommodation. So assimilation, remember, you have that new information and you're putting it into an existing schema. Accommodation, though, remember, this is when an individual is going to have a schema, and they're going to modify it or change it to incorporate the new information. I'm trying to think what other things. Egocentric and theory of the mind as well. Those are also some vocab that might come up with Piaget there. Remember, egocentric, that's when an individual really struggles to understand other people's perspective. They just assume that everyone sees the world through their perspective. Theory of the mind now is when an individual is able to understand that, oh, okay, other people have thoughts, feelings, their perspectives. Like if I pinch my brother, he feels pain. I can understand that because I feel pain and I don't like that feeling. So you're starting to all of a sudden be able to see from a different person's perspective there. So wanted to just to connect. I know this was focusing just on the stages, but that other vocab realized could come up on the AP test. So hopefully that has a little bit of an understanding or helps you out on understanding there. All right, here we go. Let's go on to our next question. Coming up, low levels of serotonin are most associated with which condition? What do we got? Random assignment and random sampling. Remember, random sampling is going to be when we're just kind of sampling. We're taking people from the population for the study. Random assignment is going to be when we're randomly assigning to either the control group or the experimental group. So random assignment needs to happen for an experiment. So that is different from sampling there, where you're just taking from that population. Then you would decide who's going to go for the different groups. Yes, majority of people got this. Awesome. We're going to the next one there. Just for time for some of these, we're going to go on to the next. There's not 92 questions. There's 62, but I'd add slides for some of these, again, just to try and actually be able to fit all the text, because Kahoot kind of limits me on stuff. Here we go. Talking about the law here. 3 seconds left. All right. Majority of people did get it. Cool. One thing here. So it looks like, we'll split it there. What we got? Threshold. So the threshold law concept that really, it's a vague label. Maybe some of you are thinking of like absolute threshold, which remember is that minimum stimulation needed to detect a stimulus. So, but that again isn't necessarily proportional. So Weber's law, remember, is stating that when we're perceiving two different stimuli, that they must differ in a constant proportion. So for example, you might not notice a 1 pound weight like if I increase a weight, so we have a weight that is 100 pounds and I put one more weight on it, going up to 101, you're probably not really going to notice that. But if I have a 5 pound weight and I add 1 more pound to it, there all of a sudden you might now notice it. So there's a little bit of the proportional aspects there. With the law of effect, realize that's going to connect more to operant conditioning. So that would be more operant conditioning. Otherwise, sensory law, that's not a thing. I just kind of put that in there. So sorry. All right, here we go. So sensory law is not a thing. All right, going on to the next thing there. Weber's law would use the just noticeable difference. So yes, that would be kind of a part of that. So good connection there. Here we go. Got some more biases. Some of these we actually kind of talked about already. Awesome. Yes, majority of people got it. We already actually went over this one. So I'm glad that people are paying attention. We're going to go on to the next one then. Again, confirmation bias. You're accepting what you want there. All right, here we go. Going on to the next set here. Again, too, just as a reminder, we're doing all 5 units, technically kind of 6. So I realize it's a longer stream. If you need to head off because you have something better you need to do, go do that. You can always rewatch this. I know it sounds weird having like a YouTube person, a teacher YouTuber who's telling you like you don't need to watch, but I want to make sure you're just using your time efficiently and effectively because I know you guys got a lot of stuff going on. So you can always rewatch. Yes, when we're looking at the parenting styles, cool. The majority of people got it. Make sure, I think generally students sometimes do mix up authoritative and authoritarian. Remember, with authoritative parents, this is that combination of those high expectations. So we still have a high bar for the kid, but the parent is also more responsive. They're going to actually discuss stuff with them. So they're setting clear rules, they're enforcing them, but they're also explaining the reason. The authoritarian, on the other hand, is just like very strict controlling. You're not getting that connection through that. And you're also not necessarily explaining it. You're just saying, this is what you're going to do. I told you to do it. There's no negotiation. We're moving on. So parenting styles, have an idea of those. That can kind of help. Generally, I see authoritative and authoritarian. Those are the two that people kind of mix up on. So have an idea of those, and that hopefully you'll be fine. All right, here we go. Student performs better on tests when they are moderately stressed, but does worse when they are too relaxed and anxious. What could we connect to? What do we got? Here we go. Let's see. Some people asking about Princeton review. Yeah, if you're looking for review stuff, find something that works for you. So if it's the ultimate review packet, awesome. If it's a different thing, that's awesome as well. You got to figure out what works best for you. All right. Yes, Yerkes-Dotson law. Really quick. Remember, this is where we're looking at essentially the amount of arousal. So like the more stimulated that you are in a situation, you actually will perform better, but only up to a certain point. If you exceed that, if it becomes too much stimulation or too low, then essentially your performance does start to decline. If you're overstimulated, you essentially might start to freeze. Like you become panicked, overwhelmed. You're not doing as much. You're like, this is just too much. And if you're under, you're bored. So you really don't care. Like you've probably all been in a class that's super, super easy. So you're not motivated to do anything in it. But you've also maybe been in a class that's very, very difficult to the point of where you're like, why am I even trying? So I have an idea there. One thing too with homeostasis. So homeostasis, remember, we're looking at that body's process of maintaining kind of these stable internal conditions. A lot of times you might see this also connected to motivation with eating, and realize the two hormones that you want to be familiar with there are going to be ghrelin and leptin. So that could come up on the test. It has in the past. Remember, ghrelin is that hormone. That's what's going to tell your brain that you are hungry. So it's going to tell you to eat. Leptin, on the other hand, is that satiety hormone. That's going to say, hey, you're kind of full, so we don't need to eat as much. Reduce there a little bit. So those are the two hormones you have to know. You don't have to know everything of the endocrine system, but those two hormones specifically are in the CED in a couple spots. So I just wanted to point that out with homeostasis, especially if we're talking about food. It'll come back up, I'm sure, again later on in this unit or review. So have an idea there. All right, here we go. After volunteering for months, Marcus feels confident in his ability to make a difference in his community. All right, what do we got? Leptin equals last bite? Yeah, that could work for sure. All right. All right. Majority of people did get this one. One thing again on the test. So I'm going to try to point out areas where I think students do make mistakes or they're terms that are similar and are easy to flip. And again, on multiple choice questions, always be on the lookout. Like if you see a question asking about self-esteem or kind of leaning that way, realize you might also see an option that's going to connect to self-efficacy because a lot of times students flip them. So College Board's trying to see, do you know the difference there? So self-esteem, remember, that's how a person perceives themselves overall. Self-efficacy, on the other hand, is an individual's belief in their ability to do a task. So that's connected specifically to doing a task. And both of those concepts are different from self-concept, which remember is this collection of beliefs that an individual has, these perceptions, these feelings about themselves. So self-esteem, self-efficacy make up a person's self-concept. So they're easy to mix up. Just wanted to point those out. I know the question wasn't asking directly about all of those, but again, just trying to make some of those connections for you. All right, let's go on to our next question here. Here we go. SSRIs like Prozac work by what? This one might be a little bit, maybe too specific of a question, but we see some examples. We'll see. SSRI mentioned. So easy. All right, we got a little bit of division here. Remember, when we're talking here about drugs, understand the two big categories of agonist drugs and also when we're looking at antagonist drugs. Those would be the two to know. Agonist drugs, again, remember, they're going to mimic or they're going to enhance the effects of a neurotransmitter. So they're going to kind of boost that. Antagonist drugs, on the other hand, block or reduce the effects. So have an idea of those two broad categories there. That's going to be important. And again, too, if you see one of those terms on the test, I would highlight it. Because again, when you speed read, it's really easy to mix up agonist versus antagonist drugs. And you also might see multiple examples in the answers there. So highlighting it slows your brain down to make sure that you don't flip the terms by mistake. So hopefully that helps there. Remember there, SSRIs here, when we're looking at this, generally they're used to treat like depression and anxiety, and they're blocking that reabsorption, so the reuptake process of serotonin in the brain, which then again is going to lead to an increased amount of serotonin in the synapse. So that the synapse again between the neurons there, and that kind of helps improve the mood and emotional regulation there. So hopefully that kind of helps with that question. All right. Going on to the next thing. Let's make it full screen here. Agonist. Does it sound like that? I haven't heard that one before. I know with AP Human Geography, every time I say agriculture, my A sounds like an E, the Midwestern dialect there. So I apologize if it sounds like that. Yeah. All right, going on. Here we go. What do we got? What's happening here? Here we go. Some people are saying they love Unit 1. That is awesome. Again, this is going to connect to that part A. Did I have this before? This is going to connect into when we're looking at part A of the AAQ. So you want to make sure you have an idea of those 5 main answers. We have our experimental and our non-experimental methodologies. So majority of people got it. Correlational studies, remember, always going to connect more to like an R value. You're going to see that, or we're going to see kind of 2 different variables. We're not going to have, though, like an independent and dependent. We're not manipulating anything with correlation. So have a nice idea of that and the differences there. All right, here we go. Next question. You love Unit 0. All right, the limbic system is most involved in what? What do we got? Do you have to know how to read graphs? I would have an idea of reading some of the graphs. I do have in the ultimate review packet for Unit 0, a practice quiz on that. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. Majority of people got, yep, limbic system is going to be emotional response. I'll quick put that up. But for the graph thing, realize there, it's more of like if you're looking particularly at like studies, if they're showing you like the correlation coefficient, you're looking at R value there, you're looking at positive skew or negative skew, you do want to understand like what you're looking at. You don't have to like memorize all these different graphs, but you might have to look at data. There's a good chance you're going to have to look at data and then be able to connect to an actual question there. So have an idea of just generals, like when you're looking at, remember, like the X, the Y axis, like reading left to right, understanding, take some time and making sure that you're looking at like the key and the legend so you can identify exactly where you're looking at. All right, we did just talk about this one. We'll go to the next one. So again, here we have those agonist and antagonist drugs. Remember, agonist drugs, they mimic or enhance the effect of the neurotransmitter. Antagonists block or reduce. So those are going to block or reduce. This is why you want to be careful on the actual AP test. Really easy to mix stuff up. So make sure you're careful when we're looking at it. All right, we got another scenario here. Here we go. All right, going on to the next thing. I realize it's kind of hard to like read quickly here, but we're looking here at a study. You're going to try to figure out, to try and help you out, you're going to try to figure on this one, the operational definition, particularly for aggression. Another thing that you're going to have to do on the actual FRQ. So remember, the nice thing with operational definitions, you're just actually going to have to read it and you're just going to take it from it. So in the FRQ, you're going to see like, what is the operational definition for, and it'll kind of tell you. So look for it in the study. You can just copy that over. Now, again, you want to have complete sentences. So you could say like the operational definition for like aggression is the number of times children hit each other. They pushed other people or yelled. Like, there you go. And that's going to be kind of stated in the study that you're reading. So realize that that's going to be in there. I do apologize. Some people are saying they didn't have enough time. I'm sorry on that one. So I'll make sure you can do it again. The big thing is that we're practicing this stuff. So, all right, here we go. Baby cries. I'll make it full screen so people can see. We're on about question 33 of 60. So when you have a lot of questions, we're talking about all the units. There's a lot here. Hopefully this is helping out. Kahoot will be posted. You can get it in the Ultimate Review Packet or the Exam Slayer. There we go. Yes. So we're looking at attachment styles here. Majority of people got it. So we'll go on to the next one just for time. So for some of these, I think what we'll do now is like if a lot of people get it, we'll just go on to that next one there just to try and help with time because I don't want people on too late here. But I also want to make sure we're providing value. So if we need to take more time, we take more time. All right. Yes. Child cleans their room and is rewarded with extra video game time. They begin to clean regularly. Which concept are we looking at? Negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, positive punishment. These are things that are pretty easy. Remember to mix up. So you want to take your time when you're actually looking at the test. Some people in the chat talking about survey methods. Survey methods are not an acceptable answer for the AAQ. So do not put a survey method down for a research. So don't do that. You won't get the points there. That's not a possible answer. So yes. All right. Majority of people got this. Awesome. So we understand the difference between positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative. One thing I want to highlight when it comes to reinforcement, and I forgot to make some questions on these, so I'm going to just take a little bit of time, but realize there's also the reinforcement schedules. So you have continuous and we also have partial. Remember, continuous reinforcement is when we have reinforcement that's going to happen every single time that behavior is performed. So that's great if you're trying to establish a new behavior. But again, it also might have the issue of where the person becomes too much focused or like focus too much on like the extrinsic reward. So if we see that happen, they could eventually, once they take that reward away, lose interest in doing the behavior because they have no intrinsic motivation. The other one, partial reinforcement, remember there's different kind of examples of it. We could have a fixed interval, which is going to be when reinforcement's given after a set amount of time. So after a certain amount of time, all of a sudden, there you go, you're getting your like reward there. And that leads to a scalped response pattern. So if we're looking graphically, and I'm realizing now I should have had like pictures or something of this. That would have maybe been a little easier. But understand the graphs here. These are your graphs. Someone asked earlier, should you know graphs? You want to have an idea of it. That scalped response pattern, you can see that right when we get closer to that time, all of a sudden, more and more people are going to perform the behavior. And so an example of that would be a company, you give out an employee of the month reward. Generally, employees are going to work harder right before it's given out because they're going to realize, oh, I got to make a good last impression. Maybe I can get the reward. Then once it's given out, you're going to see it drop because they're like, it's a long time before that's going to be there. The next one is going to be a variable interval reward. And all these are partial, remember. This is when reinforcement is going to be given after an unpredictable amount of time. So here, we're going to see responses often remain consistent. There's no incentive to change frequency at all. So if it's just completely random, I don't know when I'm going to get it. So I'll just keep doing the same old, same old. The next one would be fixed interval that you might see. This is when reinforcement's given at set time intervals. So generally you see a higher rate of response. It's a short amount of time there. So for example, restaurant gives you a free burrito after your sixth visit or something, then you're probably going to start visiting more. And once you get closer to that sixth visit, you're like, all right, let's just go back to back. So that way I can get that free burrito. And the last one then that you might see on the test is a variable ratio. And that's when reinforcement's provided after an unpredictable number of the behaviors. Slot machines are the best example of that. You never know when that next payout's coming. Next time you pull that lever, that could be the big payout, or the next one, or the next one. And so there's that high response rate that's going to be created here because that payout could literally be at any time. And again, it's connected to those behaviors. So have an idea there when we're looking at reinforcements and those schedules. I just want to point that out. I didn't have a question on it. It was hard to make a question on every topic, but I'm also trying to make sure we fill in some of those gaps. All righty. Here we go. Mia says stealing is wrong, but she downloads movies illegally. Later, she justifies it by saying everyone does it. What do we got? What do we got? All right here. Yes, some people in the chat, if you couldn't get in, you can also put it in there. Some people already got it. So remember here, we have a couple different concepts. Diffusion of responsibility generally is going to happen when an individual feels less responsible to take action, generally because other people are around them. It's like the bystander effect we could connect to there. Social trap, remember, this is going to happen when we're focusing on our short-term gains, even if there's going to be long-term consequences. And a lot of times that happens with groups. So for example, if we look at the world today, a lot of countries don't care as much about necessarily like climate change or things of that nature, because that would mean less economic growth today, even if it's going to impact people in the future. And cognitive dissonance, the majority of people did get it. This is when we have a person experiencing tension. So realize there's tension that they have between two conflicting thoughts or beliefs. So in this case, Mia believed, last question there, Mia believed that stealing's wrong, but she's also stealing at the same time. So we have a belief and an action and they contradict. So she justifies it to ease that tension. So that'd be cognitive dissonance there. All right, here we go. Hopefully people had time to read it as we're going. Tension would be like a conflict, internal. So again, you have like two conflicting things. They contradict each other. It's like believing that you shouldn't steal, but then also stealing. It doesn't connect. They don't work. They're opposites. All right. Which of the following research methods was most likely used? We've had a couple different ones of these. Again, I'm trying to focus particularly on some of the stuff that could be on that exam. Yes, awesome. Majority of people got it. It's a correlational study. So yes, this is used to examine relationships between two variables. And again, one thing to point out, we're not manipulating them here. And remember, we also can't see cause and effect. Correlation does not mean cause and effect. So for example, like the other day I was on TikTok And I saw like a video where they were saying like sunscreen, they're looking at this graph, this chart where it's showing sunscreen rates over the years and how more and more people are using sunscreen. And then it was also showing cancer rates. And they were saying like, there's a correlation. Look at this. You shouldn't use this sunscreen. They're also trying to promote their own natural sunscreen. That's not an experiment. We didn't have an independent variable. We didn't have a control. There's the third variable problem. So correlation does not equal causation. Taking those two variables, put them side to side, does not mean that they caused each other, even if it can be compelling. So have an idea of that. Correlation does not equal causation. You definitely want to know that for the test. All right, here we go. Which theory explains how we detect a faint stimuli? All righty. It's awesome too. Shout out to the people who are answering other people's questions. I do try to get to the chat as much as I can, but it's also really cool to see other students helping each other out. So thank you so much for being a great part of this community, and just the AP Psych community in general. All right, cool. Majority of people got this for time. We will go on to the next question there. So if there are some on that one, I'll try to get back to them, but I want to make sure we're being respectful of people's time here. What is effortful processing? What do we got? Some people asking about signal detection theory. Really, it's looking and trying to understand kind of that faint or weak stimuli. So like background sounds and stuff. It's actually looking at the strength of the stimulus and that person's state. Like, are you alert? Are you focused on it? It shows why someone might be able to see one sound over another, but miss different things. All right. Yes. Encoding requiring attention. Correct. So remember, with effortful effort, you have to actively be doing it. You're actively focusing your attention. This is different than automatic processing, which is going to refer to encoding unconsciously. So with automatic processing, that would be like remembering a route that you walk every day, or maybe even noticing the time or like the smell of an area. You remember those things, but it's not necessarily intentional. Where effortful, you actually have to put effort into it. You're actually addressing your attention and you're focusing. So that's going to be things like studying for an AP test. Unfortunately, we can't just absorb it. You going to bed and just listening to my videos on loop while you sleep is not going to help you necessarily do better. You actually have to put effort in and be active in your learning. All right, here you go. Lucas is in his 40s and spends time mentoring younger coworkers and volunteering in his community. What do we got? What do we got? Yes, we could also look at parts of the brain here. So some people are talking about like the hippocampus and stuff. I was going for a little bit different. All right, majority of people did get this one. So remember with the stages. So I'll put it back so you can kind of see it there. So remember here, generativity versus stagnation. We're looking at Erik Erikson here. That is going to be focusing kind of that middle adulthood. So a lot of focus during this stage is on the individual contributing to society, helping guide that next generation. If we go to integrity versus despair, this is generally the last stage of Erik Erikson's kind of theory there. And this is going to be later in adulthood. Generally, you're over 65. This is where individuals are going to reflect on life. They're going to look back. They evaluate it. They're going to say, hey, do I have regrets? Am I satisfied? Industry versus inferiority. Remember, that's generally kind of those middle school, about to go into high school years. A lot of focus there on that sense of like achievement, on competence, on school is a major part there. And intimacy versus isolation. Remember, that's going to be around your 20s, 30s. This is where you're starting to figure out kind of intimate relationships, what career path you want to do. You're starting to now be out on your own in the world. I mean, you're trying to kind of continue to find your place. You're building off of those previous stages there where you're looking at your identity. So hopefully that helps there. All right, here we go. Next one. Every time Leah here feels anxious about social situations, she experiences rapid heartbeat and shaky hands. So she's thinking here about some social situations. What do we got? All righty. Yes. Majority of people got it. Awesome. And majority of people did not mix it up with agoraphobia. I always had students that would mix that up. Remember, social anxiety disorder, it's that fear of being judged or embarrassed in social situations. So these are connecting to unit 5. Agoraphobia, on the other hand, is that fear of being in a place where really escape might be difficult or you won't be able to get help there. So it'll end the individual to become panicked, kind of become distressed there. So they're both kind of dealing with social situations, but that would be the difference between those. Agoraphobia, again, is that fear of not being able to escape. Social anxiety, just the fear of being judged or embarrassed there. All righty. For generalized anxiety disorder, that's going to be where essentially the individual is just kind of always persistently worried about a variety of areas in life. It's not just social situations. So generalized anxiety disorder, that could be about social situations. That could be an aspect of it. But just think of the term generalized, meaning it's like applying to a large variety of things. So it's just not as specific there. All righty, here we go. Going on to our next question. I did miss. Okay, I apologize. I missed, Jonathan, your message there. Shout out to Mr. Gardner. Shout out to Mr. Gardner. So shout out to you. Thank you for being an awesome teacher. I also hope you tell your teacher that as well. We're not gonna do a bunch of shout outs right now though. So I realized I had missed a super chat there from a while back. So I'll try to connect back there to it. For Bandura, you don't have to worry about Bandura, but social cognitive theory, that is who you would have to worry about. Bandura is not specifically in that CED there, but the theory is. So when we're looking at this reciprocal determinism, so realize this can also connect to concepts from Unit 1. So this is looking at our personal factors, our behavior, and our environment. And you might have seen like that kind of triangle. They all influence each other. So for example, someone who has personal factors that are more extroversion, they want to try risky things, then they're going to put themselves in environments that are going to lead to that. They might go rock climbing or they might go skydiving. Then they also might start interacting with more people that also do those things. So now you have a group of people that have similar interests. And then we might even see some increase in that. So all these things connect. Reciprocal determinism, it's this idea in that social cognitive theory that it's looking at this interaction between an individual's behavior, personal factors, and environment. So in our example there, Maya's outgoing personality, that ended up affecting, and I can quick put that back, that ended up affecting her future behavior, her confidence then. So we can see that influence happening there. Remember, with self-efficacy, that is just the person's belief in their ability to succeed in a situation or a particular task. So confidence here is mentioned, but the main focus of this is more on that interaction. We can see both of those. Traits and the stability there, that's going to connect more to personality traits and over time. That's not necessarily the main focus. Personality traits could influence the reason why Maya's outgoing, but that's not the focus here. And then again, self-concept is made up of self-esteem and also self-efficacy. It's this broader idea of who we are as individuals. So again, her experiences there might influence her, but it's not the main focus there. So hopefully that kind of helped with those concepts and terms. Here we go. I would guess the Lions would win 100%. 100%. All right, here we go. During a science activity, a child spills water and says, now the water is gone forever. We connect here to Piaget's development. What do we got? What stage might we be in? Looked at some of these earlier. What do we got? Ooh, really good question here. Can points be taken off my response if I add too much detail and info than needed? I want to be safe. No. Okay. The caveat to that is if you put conflicting information. So for example, if you like, you're talking about self-efficacy, but then you're like, oh, I don't remember the difference between self-efficacy and self-esteem. And so you end up putting like conflicting information. So you're like saying both things, trying to like cover everything. Then you could lose a point. You don't want to like contradict yourself, but you're not going to lose a point for putting too much information. At the same time, though, remember when you get to the FRQs, you only have 70 minutes for both. So I would make sure you originally just first answer that question exactly what you need to do. Go through the rest. If you have time at the end, then go back and add extra information to further support your answer, because you want to make sure that you really have everything answered. So for example, like the identify question for part A of the AAQ, you only really need a sentence. Now at the end, if you want to add more, you can, but make sure you're not adding a bunch right away and then you end up missing questions later on because you didn't have enough time. So majority of people got this. We'll go on to that next one there. With the sensory motor stage, realize that's kind of about birth to 2. That was the next most popular answer. And that's where you're, again, learning through those senses and actions. So you haven't really developed language or that concept stuff yet. All right, we'll make this full screen so people can read it. All right. Going on to the next question. Here we go. What concepts helps explain this situation? I didn't have it, but that could also connect. Yeah, if we're looking at the cocktail party effect, that could also connect. All righty, here we go. This is the first year that they have ever done AAQs and EBQs. So yes, this is the first year for the whole change. But yes, selective attention would be the correct answer. Pretty much everyone got that one. So we're going to go on to the next one there. If you have some questions, I'll try to answer them in a little bit there. Cocktail party effect we could also look at as well. So that's, again, when you're able to like focus on particular things in a loud environment. All right, scatter plot shows that as hours of sleep decrease, reported stress increases. What do we got here? We are getting down there. We are on right now. So some people asking questions. We're on question 40, I think 45. I think. Pretty sure. Been trying to like keep a little tally there. All right. Yes, negative correlation. So with correlation, this is going to be part of part C. I actually did a video and posted on YouTube where I went over the different things. You want to be able to interpret it. So you don't have to worry about calculating it, but you do have to understand about interpreting it. Realize positive correlation has an R value between 0 and +1. And again, the closer you get to +1, the stronger that connection is. So the stronger the correlation. Also remember, an R value of 0 to -1 is going to be a negative correlation. And again, closer you are to -1, the stronger that negative correlation. And then the closer you are to 0, the R value, well, that would mean that there's no correlation. So again, farther away you get from like -1 and 1, as we get closer to 0 in the middle there, you're going to have no correlation. Farther we're getting out there, you're going to have either positive or negative. So remember that. Hopefully that helps out. Correlation definitely could be on that AAQ 100% there. So remember too, with a negative correlation, what we're looking at when one variable increases, the other decreases. So we have that inverse relationship. With a positive correlation, when one variable goes up, the other goes up. So they're both going up together or they're both going down together. So they are connected there. So have an idea of those. That's definitely going to help you out for part C of the AAQ. All right, in a study on test anxiety, students who received mindfulness training scored an average of 10 points higher than the control group. What do we got? Going up here. All right, the researcher also reported a large effect size. So again, this is something that could connect to part C of that AAQ. What do we got here? All right, majority of people got it. Yes. Remember that large effect size. That's going to tell you that there is a meaningful difference and impact. So the larger the effect size, that's looking at that difference there in its practical terms. So in like the real world. So we can see that work. If it's a low effect size, then not. And it is different. Remember, effect size is different than statistical significance. So that's going to connect more into the p-value there. So like a p-value of like 0.90 would mean like 90% chance that the results are due to luck. So it would not be statistically significant. So you don't have to worry about calculating p-values and stuff, but you do have to understand the data and how to connect into statistical significance. So have an idea there. All right, here we go. We're getting down there. Statistical significance is like, is the data there, is it actually due to the connection between the variables? Or is it, if it's not statistically significant, then it's going to be due to luck, or it could be other factors as well. Looking at parts of the brain, a lot of people, easy points. Yes, connecting our brain hemispheres. Yeah. One thing you could connect here too is that split brain research. So if you're severing the corpus callosum, you could spend a little time remembering that, of that division there, and then how that impacts the individual. So remember, this is that kind of thick band of nerves that allow our right and left hemispheres to connect, to talk. All right. Marcus is better able to remember information from his psychology class when he takes the test in the same room where he learned it. So we got stuff with memory here. What do we got? All right, what are we talking about? What do we got? What can connect? For people wondering about like statistical significance and effect size. So I see some people asking there. The video I posted yesterday, like part C, check that one out, because I have a whole like section of it. It's like 10 minutes. I just go, it's all just the stats. And I'm just trying to talk about like how to like look at them and the difference there. So see if that helps there. That might be a little bit more beneficial for time's sake. All right, majority of people got context. Yes, is correct. One thing to note here, remember with state-dependent memory, this is that kind of internal, like if you're really tired or you're really alert, or that would be what's going to trigger the memory. Like, oh, I remember the last time I was super, super tired. I was like sleep deprived. All of a sudden you're connecting to that memory of a previous thing. Mood congruent is going to be when you're going to recall information that would match your current emotional state. So like you get really, really upset, and all of a sudden you start remembering all these other times that made you more upset. In the context, think about your situation. We're talking in this sense of the classroom. That would be your situation, the context that you are in. All right, go back here. All right, which type of neuron carries messages to the brain? To the brain. What do we got? And all right, let's just quick talk about it. So one of the things, remember, afferent, when we're looking at afferent, it's also known as sensory neurons. So afferent neurons, sensory neurons, similar thing there. And that's carrying information from the body to the brain. So when we're looking at, you can think of like afferent, arrives at the brain. E for efferent, which would be exit. Efferent neurons are also called motor neurons. Those are exiting the brain. So that's carrying instructions, that's carrying information from the brain and the spinal cord to the muscles. So essentially we have our CNS and our PNS there, where we're looking at our different nervous systems. So have an idea of those. Another neuron too to be familiar with is interneurons. So remember, interneurons are found in that central nervous system, so in the CNS. And those are going to then connect our afferent and our efferent neurons. So we're connecting there our sensory and our motor neurons. Another concept too that you might see on the test is, remember, the reflex arc. So that's that neural pathway. And it's going to be automatic. It's involuntary. You don't have to like consciously think of it. You would use this, for example, if you touch something really hot. So you touch something hot, then it's going to send it through your sensory neurons. It's going to go to the central nervous system, where then it's going to relay that information quickly through the interneurons, immediately then to the motor neurons, goes back to your hand, tells you move your hand away so you're not getting burned. You don't have to think of it. It's like automatic. It's just happening. So the reflex arc would be that. It's that neural pathway that's going to allow the body to really quickly respond. The brain isn't even going to have to process it. Then eventually you process, you're like, oh, I got burned. That didn't feel good. But that is just a survival thing. So afferent, efferent, and also interneurons. Those are three neurons to have an idea of for that AP test. Hopefully that helps you out. Cool. Let's go on to our next question here. The legend, the puffin is back. Here we go. got another scenario here. Again, the reason why I have these is just because Kahoot limits stuff. So I was trying to get it where people are able to get in if they want. Also, too, real quick, we'll go now to show it. Get to our question, then actually I'll show this next thing because I see a lot of people asking about study stuff. All right. Are the results generalizable and specifically to all college students? So that's our focus. Someone was asking about interneurons. I was going to pin your question. I apologized. I missed it. Interneurons, remember, are neurons that are found in that central nervous system. So they're going to be what connect the afferent, our sensory, and our efferent, our motor neurons. So they connect them there. It allows them to quickly send messages back and forth. Cool. Majority of people got this. Awesome, awesome, awesome. One thing I want to just quick point out for everyone watching, if you are looking for a review free, you can join anytime. Check out our Discord server. I'll post a link in the chat there. So if you want to, every day people post review questions. So you can see here we have different studies, and then you can click here and show you the answer. So, and then people are talking about it too. So it's a great free community. We have also different channels. So you can get in little study channels. We have all the different units here. So if you're looking for this, it's free to join. I just posted the link, so you can join at any time. It's a cool community though. So if you're looking for just free stuff, it's very student focused, student driven. Love to have you be part of it. And that's free too. So I saw some people asking for some other review stuff that's free. You can check that out if you want. All right, here we go. Next question. Repeating information to keep it in memory best connects with what? What do you got? Here we go. Some people are asking if I could pin it. Yes, I can. Now a bunch of people are going to be joining. All right, once I can get the chat off I can pin the link too. So if you want, I should have it in the description. All right. And yes, it is maintenance rehearsal. So awesome. Majority of people got that. We're going to go in there. This is generally going to be when you're trying to keep information in your kind of working memory, your short-term memory. So you're trying to keep it in there. You keep repeating it over and over again. If you've ever had that experience of right before a test where you keep saying the terms back and back, and then all of a sudden you start the test, you try to write them down as fast as you can. You're trying to get them there, and all of a sudden you can't remember it. Okay. I got the Discord thing pinned. All right, which best reflects a biopsychosocial view of depression? So looking here at Unit 5. Awesome. Majority of people got this. Yes. Remember, we're looking at all of these different aspects. So when we're talking about this, if we're looking at the serotonin imbalance, that's going to be more the biological perspective. It's just focusing on neurotransmitters and the function, but it's not including the psychological or social factors that the biopsycho model does. Remember, learned helplessness, that's going to probably, learned helplessness in general is just when individuals believe they have no control over a situation. So if, for example, you're in a situation that you can have an impact on, you could have an impact and change it, but because of past experiences, you just believe you can't, you've just preemptively given up. Adverse childhood experiences, these are social and environmental factors that can connect to trauma and stuff, but it's not alone capturing everything. So when we're looking at it, the genes, the cognition, and also the life stress, that shows all aspects there. So that one is just the best answer. Adverse childhood experiences could be aspects of it, but again, the other one was just better fitting. All right, here we go. Some people are saying they just started studying today. You got time, but you're pushing it. Definitely pushing it there. Let's see. Now a bunch of people are going into the Discord, so I just have to mark as I was saying there's an unusual amount of people coming in. All right. Yes, majority of people got it. We're going to go on to the next question then. All right, here we go. During a class debate, the group supporting school uniforms becomes even more strongly in favor of them after discussing their arguments. What concept could we connect to? And we are getting down there. We're on about question 54. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Yes, I added stuff for everything. If you're using this right now, what I would do, summary videos, watch those, and then you can do those study guides. They just go over all the content. Then go to like that exam slayer and take a full practice test. Then you'll be able to see when you finish it, it'll tell you what units you missed. Now you know what units to go and study more. And actually, to be fair, you could do that first. You could go to the exam slayer, take the 2 full practice AP tests, take one of them first, identify what units you're struggling with. And if you notice, oh, I did really bad on like unit 3, you could go take the practice test for unit 3. Then you can identify exactly what topics you need to study. Now you know how to focus your studies. Then go to the ultimate review packet and review those. So I think the best way to study right now is honestly just take practice tests. And then when you're done with it, break down your answers to see where are you struggling with, because now you know what to study. There's so many concepts in this class. And so it's a lot more helpful if you can actually target your studies on exactly your weak points instead of trying to review everything all at once. All right. Majority of people did get this with groupthink. It's kind of a similar one there. But remember, groupthink involves groups making poor decisions due to that desire for harmony or consensus. So you're actually trying to get rid of some of the other things. But there's generally there, we're seeing some poor decisions happening. So that one isn't the answer because of that. Yes. All right. Hopefully that made sense. I should have explained it better, but a great way to study is taking practice tests. And then the important thing isn't what you get on it. The important thing is what you do after that. Looking actually at your wrong answers to identify what units you got wrong or what topics, because now you know exactly what to study. Then go and take another practice test. And then you can see, did you improve? Did you not? Or did you identify other weak points? And now you're being a lot more efficient in your studies because you're targeting exactly where you need to study. And that is the advantage of the exam slayer, because once you finish it, it tells you all that. It breaks it down. It even tells you how much time you spent on each one. Yes, majority there for forming memories there. Correct. Remember, with anterograde amnesia, this is that inability to form long-term memories. So generally it happens after a brain injury or a trauma. For the most part, people with this condition can recall past memories and even perform some learned skills, but they can't store that new information there. Past memories, on the other hand, that's going to be more of an aspect of retrograde amnesia. So not anterior grade. So again, 2 terms, super easy to mix up on the test. So make sure that you take things slow. If you see it, highlight that on the test so you don't make that mistake. Because you might see 2 examples that connect, one to retrograde and one to anterior grade. So you want to make sure that you know exactly which one you're looking for on that AP exam. All right, here we go. Researchers are testing whether listening to classical music helps students focus better while studying. One group listens to music and the other studies in silence. They then are going to measure how many correct answers they get on a test or on a quiz. Sorry. So for this one, we did one earlier on the independent variable. What do we got for the dependent variable? What do we got? Where College Board tests, you should be able to find College Board tests on AP Classroom. So that's another great spot to take tests. So definitely AP Classroom would be the College Board ones. Yes, remember, dependent is going to be the effect and the independent variable is going to be the cause. So cool. We are almost done. We're getting down there. Here we go. Therapist helps clients recognize and challenge irrational thoughts and replace them with more logical beliefs. What is going on? What type of therapy? And really, I should have maybe worded this a little different. What perspective would this best kind of go with here? All right. If you're looking, so some people are asking about like the ultimate review packet or the exam slayer. You can bundle them together. If you go to the site, you can see it. You can also get them individually. Depending on what you need right now, you might not need both. Cool. Majority of people got that. We're going to go on to the next one there for time. If you are needing more, just exactly like identifying, taking practice tests and identifying exactly where you need to review, definitely go with the exam slayer because that's all tests. There is a practice unit test for every single unit. And then when you finish it, it'll tell you exactly what topic each question in the CD it connects to. It also tells you how much time and stuff. I can show it at the end of this if you want. We're almost done with it. The Ultimate Review Packet is all about learning the content. So it's just all of the concepts. So you have the full summary videos, study guides, answer keys. Cool. Majority of people got yes. So when we're looking here, remember positive and negative symptoms. Positive are adding something. So like a delusion is something that is being added. One thing too, even if you forget that on the test, because a lot of students will sometimes mix up negative and positive symptoms. You can even just look here, like a lack of motivation, reduced emotional responses, reduction in speech. All of those are dealing with taking something away. Delusions are the only thing that doesn't have that. It kind of stands out. So you could use some process of elimination there to be able to connect it. So majority of people got those. So that's good. All right, here we go. Blank thinks that psychological disorders happen through conditioning and environmental factors. What approach could we connect to? So what do we got here? All right. Does the exam have a calculator? No calculator. No calculator. No calculator. Therapies could be on there. Again, focus on the concepts that are in that CD. So those would be the specific ones. I can show that in just a second there. All right. Behavioral approach. So when we're looking at this, the reason why I have this as the right answer, remember the behavioral approach seeks to explain psychological disorders as a result of these learned behaviors. So classical conditioning, operant conditioning. Here we're seeing that environmental influence. It's focusing on observable behaviors and how they are shaped then through reinforcement, punishment, or even just associations, because you could also have observational learning. For the other possible answer that people had was a sociocultural approach. That's more focusing on how culture, social factors, and societal things like cultural norms or family or community influence behavior, but it's not focusing on conditioning. So that would be the difference there. Again, I don't know why I made the picture bigger there. Again, this question was asking like the disorder here has happened through conditioning. That is the key. When you see conditioning, think of then that behavioral approach. All righty, here we go. Next question coming up. We're getting down there. What do we have? One or two left? We're almost out. After skipping breakfast, I'll make it full screen so you can see. Maya feels a strong urge to eat. Once she eats, the feeling goes away and the body returns to balance. What do we got? Good luck with chemistry. I hope you rock it. So some people are saying this. Remember too, we could also connect to ghrelin and leptin. These are two hormones that you want to be familiar with. So remember, ghrelin is going to tell you that you want to eat more. Leptin's going to say, hey, you're full. You don't need to eat more. But yes, this would be homeostasis. So your body trying to get that optimal balance there, maintaining the internal balance. That would deal with your temperature, your hunger, hydration, all that. That would connect perfectly there. And again, ghrelin, leptin, two things with hunger I'd just be familiar with. All right, here we go. We got our next one. Jordan believes that rewards and punishments shape his behavior more than his own chores or goals. All right, going on to the next question here. What do we got? Some of the things like the drive reduction theory, like James Lang, don't worry about memorizing those names. The weird thing with the new rewrite of AP Psych is when we're looking at motivation, it mentions like these older theories, but it doesn't say them by name. So it mentions some of the ideas that they have, but doesn't specifically say by name. So for a lot of those, I don't think you're going to see them as like identifying, but you might see like concepts of it that could appear. All right. Yes. Remember, with external locus of control, this is when individuals believe that these external factors are what they're going to control. If you have too much external locus, you might start to get into learned helplessness. And remember, internal, think inside of you. This is when an individual believes they have control over their lives. So they think that they have agency. They can do this. They can make an impact on it. So always good there. Internal and external, remember, can also connect into motivation too. Like internal motivation, I'm motivated because I want to do it. For me, extrinsic, on the other hand, external there, where we're looking at that. So that's intrinsic. Sorry, I shouldn't have said internal. Intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic would be those outside factors, like it rewards. All right, here we go. This is our last question. We're almost done. We are getting there. Range and standard deviation can be on the exam. Yes. All right. We're going to go on. Do like 5 more seconds to kind of read it. And moving on to the next thing. Here we go. The last question. Holy cow, this was long. I've never done a Kahoot on all, like, an entire class. Hopefully, though, you got some value out of it. That's my hope. All right. Another thing that you could see on that AAQ. It helped? Good. Good. I'm glad it helped. Another thing on the AAQ, generalizability. You're going to have to be able to talk about, is something generalizable? So when we're looking here, toddlers in the US, yep. If we're connecting, I'll try to show it so it's bigger there. So realize that study here, we use random sampling. We included toddlers from different geographic areas, different backgrounds across the entire United States, which would make it then more generalizable to the broader US toddler population. So just have an idea there. For the preschoolers who live in urban areas, the sample included urban, rural, suburban. So it's not just urban. So it's essentially too narrow there. All children raised in a bilingual household. They didn't talk about that. So again, when you're looking at these, the nice things with the AAQs, you're able to see some of that information in there. You want to take time reading it. And again, underline and highlight any information that you think could help you out. But they didn't focus on that at all. So generalizing to that group wouldn't be supported. And then children who do not attend daycare, there's, again, no mention of daycare in the description. So it wouldn't work for generalizability there. That's not what we're talking about when we're looking at the population and the sample. So remember there, you got to connect into those concepts. All right, let's see quick. What do we got for our leaderboard? Here we go. The Wonder Raccoon in 3rd place. The Great Wolf in 2nd. And at the top, the legend, the Puffin. Woo! Way to go. Awesome job. Real quick, if you're looking for a great study group, feel free to join the Discord server. I'll quick put it. Too much stuff up all at once. Feel free to join the Discord server. So this is a cool community with a bunch of people. It's free. And they're studying. There's a ton of different review resources on here, vocab. It's an awesome community. I can see some people are even in the study chat now. So feel free to check that out if you are interested. Also too, if you need more help, you can check out the Exam Slayer and the Ultimate Review Packet. By all means, you can. So if you're going to head out right now, by all means, head out. Have a great night. Thank you so much. Remember, you can do this. You're going to rock this. It's just a test. At the end of the day, you'll do fine. But we might have something tomorrow, so stand by. I got to try to finish some stuff up. So if I can get it finished, we might do like a general thing tomorrow where it's talking more of just like some tips and tricks. It wouldn't be that long. Definitely not 2 hours like tonight. But tomorrow it'd be around 7 p.m. again. And it would be just general like AAQ, EBQ, multiple choice, some tips and strategies there. So we're going to wrap up for tonight, though. But again, if you need more testing help, check out that Exam Slayer. I did say I'd show it, so I'll quick show a test if you're interested. If not, again, no worries at all. So just a couple of people I know were asking. So, all right. So if you want, this would be that test what I was talking about. It's like if you go on here, there's a tracker to help you out. But I have this for each unit. If I even just quick hit finish. So you can see it's kind of similar. You have scenarios. You're then going through and answering it. But when you had finished, this is what I was talking about in the stream. It breaks it down. So I can see questions 1 through 5 connect to 1.1. So now, like if I just got 1.1 wrong, I would know, oh, I should be studying these concepts. You can see again the time and stuff and the explanation. So if this would help you out, by all means, check it out. That would be helpful. But no worries if you're not. You got to do right now what's best for you. So that's all the time we have for today. I think there was a couple super chats. I'll try to get to some of them. I think I got to a couple there, but someone said, I self-studied with this channel, and I just want to say by watching your videos, I went from getting a 50% to a 90%. That is phenomenal. I'm so happy that I've been able to help you out. When I started this channel, I just did it for my own students. and it was to help them in class. And so it's been so cool that it's been providing value and help for all of you. So I really, really appreciate the kind words. And I'm so glad that these videos were able to help you out. So thank you for that. Other one saying the AAQs, there is some in the exam slayer. Yes. I think I talked about those. Cool. I think that was all of them. All right. How do you calculate correlational coefficient? You don't have to worry about the calculation there. It's more of interpreting it. So focus on understanding it. All right. We're going to wrap this up for tonight because I've been talking now for 2 hours straight. So have a good night, everybody. Get some sleep. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm Mr. Sinn. And until next time, I'll see you online. Good luck on that AP test. You are going to rock it. Have confidence in yourself. You can do this. I know you can. Talk to you later. Have a good night.